Legends EA proves that years of quality complaints have finally reached Game Freak, but is it enough? Now, during that intro, many of you may have been thinking to yourself, maybe even commenting down below, but AJ, I love Pokemon Let's Go, or Pokemon Legends Arceus was goated. I have no interest in swaying anybody's personal opinion on that. If that's your truth, I love that for you. However, I will assert this, when it comes to the way those games actually played out in the gaming community at large, it's disingenuous to claim those feelings were the norm, or the general consensus amongst fans when those games were revealed. Hardcore, casual, or anywhere in between. Pokemon Legends Arceus was my most anticipated game after its initial reveal. In a lot of ways, it was the realization of a vision I've had and championed for Pokemon games for literally all of my time creating content on the internet. The first video I ever created in my life was about my desire for Pokemon to take what at the time were seen as big risks with Pokemon games, like wild encounters in the overworld, an open world that allowed for sequence breaking, the standardization of partner Pokemon, the ability to play in the same game instance as your friends, and yes, a new battle system. After a consistent trend of Game Freak and Pokemon Company ultimately coming through and providing many of these previously unlikely hopes in games that followed since then, Pokemon Legends Arceus at the time of its reveal felt to me like a dream come true. Fast forward to actually receiving the game, and that dream, at least then, with that game, didn't actually align with reality. I've spoken about my problems with Pokemon Legends Arceus in the past, and let's just say it's not exactly an all-timer for me. I don't really have any interest in rehashing my in-depth thoughts as to why here, because it'll likely just lead to a series of straw man arguments in the comments that aren't helpful to anyone. But suffice to say, when Pokemon Legends EA was initially revealed, I was very skeptical. I did not have faith that a sequel was the solution for a variety of reasons, and for the most part, I still don't really like the fact that Legends Arceus ended up, at least as it stands, being spun off as an entire sub-series of games. I think Legends games even now are better served as proof of concept tech demos for ideas that eventually find their way into mainline games than they are as a side series to give the actual interesting ideas to, so the main series can continue to play it safe for another 30 years. I still firmly believe in order to get Pokemon games to the point where they feel in line with the distinction of being a cog in the biggest entertainment brand in the world, they need to be produced with an all hands on deck approach, with development cycles that are just as, if not longer, than the development cycles we see for games like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or even the modern Grand Theft Auto games, in spite of the excuses the fan base makes to shoot that possibility down. But I digress. We don't know for sure what the future of Pokemon looks like at large, but we do know Pokemon Legends EA at least exists. And I personally know that my mind has been changed at the moment for very specifically this game for a few key reasons. The first time I talked about Pokemon Legends EA, I was down on it due to a combination of the precedent set by Legends Arceus in tandem with the relatively vague time period setting in the ZA reveal trailer. I was concerned that the game would once again take part in the past Pokemon world, and that time period would once again be used as easy justification to limit the gameplay possibilities. Thankfully, that changed in time. The second time I talked about Legends EA, we learned that it wasn't trying to be a period piece and therefore wouldn't be using an earlier point in history as a key selling point. And not only that, but it opted to double down on what Arceus lacked, with the new focus of the game being battling, not just catching. And it didn't end there. We also learned that the game would be changing another aspect of Arceus that I ended up disliking, the battle system. And for the first time ever, it would be a deviation from a long history of turn-based combat in Pokemon. Now, the latest new info dump, which we got from Pokemon World 2025, is the reveal of 4-player online multiplayer in Pokemon Legends EA, which, if done well, would address yet another one of my big issues with Legends Arceus being a single-player only affair, which I contend drastically lessens the longevity of that game. People fight me on this all the time, but do me a favor and check the Twitch directory. How many people do you see Pokemon Legends Arceus? And then check other older Pokemon games and report back. And for the people that maybe don't feel like doing all that, tell me, when was the last time you played Legends Arceus? Or better yet, ask one of your friends that maybe isn't as deep into Pokemon as you may be. When was the last time they played Pokemon Legends Arceus? The cherry on top of all of it came with the release of ZA gameplay previews from creators and journalists, footage from fans at various events, and first-hand accounts of how the games feel to play. My biggest complaint for Pokemon Legends Arceus is how clunky various aspects of that game felt to navigate. Namely, the ride Pokemon system was poorly executed, and boss battles felt like PS1 era boss battles with bad hit detection and poorly timed recovery frames. Pokemon Legends ZA seems to have remedied the latter issue when it comes to the Switch 2 edition, at least. The gameplay looks a lot smoother and the combat looks fluid. I can't say for sure until I play the game myself, but all of this together at least allows me to be excited for this game in a way that I was apprehensive to be at first. All of that said, I don't think all of this, even if it turns out to be perfectly executed, will be representative of what Pokemon's future should be. And this feeling became easier to illustrate with the rollout from Mega Hawlucha. In the modern era of Pokemon games, Pokemon Company loves doing promotional short films of sorts when they reveal new Pokemon and the lead up to new games. I love them, mainly because they illustrate what's so cool about the Pokemon world, but at the same time, they frustrate me because they illustrate how low fidelity Pokemon games are. Don't misunderstand me. I don't mean fidelity as gamers understand it. I don't care about how many polygons Pikachu has. What I mean by low fidelity is how poor of a job the gameplay of Pokemon games does at emulating the experiences it's intended to. To give some examples via the marketing for the games that we're playing, when people in the Pokemon world hear tale of a mysterious rare Pokemon, they go on an expedition that is told through the lens of a found footage horror film. Legends Arceus did a similar thing when revealing Hisuian Zoroa, and so on. When us as the player hear tale of a powerful Pokemon, we go to Route 19 or whatever and farm encounters until it shows up at random. Or if I wanted to be overly charitable, we could use Alpha Pokemon in Legends Arceus as an example. See somebody with an Alpha Empoleon? It's a static encounter that just anyone can get. Nothing special to see there. Or with Legends ZA in specific, the battle system is and is supposed to be the coolest thing about it. And even that falls short of how the Pokemon world is portrayed elsewhere, to the point where Pokemon Company felt it necessary to produce a separate animated trailer to showcase a battle between Machamp and Mega Hawlucha to pair with the game version, and then proceeded to post copious amounts of anime footage to drive home how cool Hawlucha is supposed to be. Of course, pre-rendered trailers aren't exclusive to Pokemon, and they definitely aren't anything new. Games have done them since cutscenes became a thing. However, when you look at a game like, say, Call of Duty or even Super Smash Bros., the fidelity of the gameplay experience is a lot higher when compared to their pre-rendered cutscenes and promotional material than even Pokemon Legends ZA is. In other words, what you play in those games is a lot closer to what they try to sell you on in their promotional material than Pokemon is, to the point where Pokemon's use of pre-rendered footage feels more like a holdover from the 8-bit era, where the box art for games were on a complete different universe from the actual game. That was acceptable in a time where those visuals were used to sell a given game's proximity to experiences gaming hardware wasn't advanced enough to accurately replicate. But in 2025, we have the technology to close the gap. Plenty of games have proven that to be true. Pokemon developers just need to put in the time, money, and effort to do the same. In fairness to Pokemon, there's been a culture of essentially infantilizing Game Freak as if they aren't capable of creating these experiences, and there's a contingent of old school purists that asserts they aren't willing to. I've seen more than enough to firmly believe both groups are wrong, and the former group is actively a deterrent to the latter. Pokemon Company especially has the means to make this vision for Pokemon a reality. And Game Freak has been posturing for a while while now that they too want to move in that direction. For a long time, a contingent of the fan base loudly opposed it, but I think there's reason to believe Game Freak's attempt at boiling the frog on progress is in its final phase. In the same way that Pokemon Sun and Moon telegraphed an eventual open world Pokemon game, I think it's clear that auto battles or the near real-time battles in Terra raids were telegraphing the true real-time battle system we ended up getting in Legends EA. In other words, I think seeds that were planted in Scarlet and Violet aren't going to stop growing there. And I think Legends EA will continue this trend by being the foundation future games continue to expand on. We'll see features like the Union Circles continue to expand. We'll see the Synchro Machine feature in future Pokemon games make similar strides. And I'm sure we'll see a lot of things that I can't speak on yet from Legends EA find their way in new Pokemon games that follow it. I maintain that Pokemon Champions is Game Freak's way of preserving the old battle system in a world where they plan to move past it in the mainline games. I even think non-Pokemon games in it and outside of Game Freak will have an impact. Like Beasts of Reincarnation could very well lead to even more action-based gameplay experiments in Pokemon games. The Legend of Zelda has already been a well of inspiration for the Pokemon franchise throughout the years. To be clear, some of this is absolutely me speaking from a place of bias and personal desire, but I do firmly believe there's way too much smoke for there to be no fire in this regard. In the same way and for the same reasons, I felt that to be the case for the new features I detailed at the start of the video that we are now enjoying. I think everything Pokemon Company has done in the last decade or so has been in an effort to grow beyond their roots, and despite the fact that their first attempts at this have been controversial and have fell short for various reasons, they have been rewarded by the market for these projects in ways that sticking to the formula in years prior with games that hardcore fans revere didn't. Many of the games that the Pokemon community hail as the game's representative of Game Freak's prime also just so happen to be games with historical commercial lows. Contrast that with games like Sword Shield, Scarlet Violet, and even Legends Arceus, and you see the games that reach commercial highs, the levels of which haven't been reached in over 20 years, are also the games that are trying the hardest to push the envelope forward and introduce big new ideas. You'll see people dismiss these games' success as sheep just buying whatever Pokemon Company presents to them, but in reality, it's a reflection of what the masses care more about. They very clearly want Pokemon games to have gameplay that better represents the world. Otherwise, every game prior to these games would have continually outsold each other in the way that the new games are right now. Most people outside of the Pokemon echo chamber want more ambitious features. They want open worlds. Pokemon games need to evolve, and I think the powers that be are aware of it and willing to make it happen. I don't know if that'll mean the games will be at the place they need to be in Gen 10 when it's likely released for their 30th anniversary, but history has shown Pokemon Company likes to make big moves during their milestone anniversaries. So there's reason to believe their 30th anniversary will at the very least be a precursor to what is. In the same way, Sun and Moon was the precursor for what Scarlet and Violet ended up being. We don't have long to find out with all things considered. Pokemon Legends EA is about 2 months away, and that game's release is a hop, skip, and a jump from Pokemon Day. I think we're in a good place, and it'll only get better from here. Watch this other video on the future of Pokemon games. Thank you to paid shop.watchredirect.com members like Trev L. Steinberg for making this video possible. Hit the link in the description to join them in the video credits and in receiving physical and digital perks.